You want an aura so heavy that men choose their words before they speak to you. You want rooms to quiet by half a step when you walk into them. You want your name carried carefully through conversations you were never part of. You want to be the man other men study and cannot solve. You want the kind of power that never announces itself. The kind people feel in their chests before they can explain it. Understand this. That power is not built in noise, not in hard stares, not in the deeper voice you practiced, or the version of yourself you perform when you need to be taken seriously. Every one of those is visible, and anything visible is a confession. A man trying to seem dangerous has already told the room why he needed to. It is built in what you withhold. Machiavelli learned this in side courts where the wrong expression could end a family. He watched rulers hold power for 30 years and die in their own beds. He watched others dragged out of palaces they believed were permanent. The difference was never courage. Men do not submit to strength they can measure. They submit to strength they cannot. The prince who could be read was already being managed, usually by someone standing 3 steps behind him. I saw it myself, not in his books, in rooms far more dangerous than any you will enter. The heaviest presence I ever encountered belonged to a man who said almost nothing, not imposing, not clever in conversation. Ambassadors twice his intellect left the study shaken and could not say why. He gave them nothing. No approval to chase, no irritation to exploit, no enthusiasm to mirror back at him. They came looking for a handle, and they found a wall. You have been building handles your entire life. Every reaction you give is one. Every flinch, every explanation, every laugh that arrives a half second too late. In this monologue, I will teach you to remove them. 11 rules. Each one strips away something you have been handing out for free, and each one will cost you a habit you currently mistake for your personality. This is not a course in intimidation. Intimidation is loud, and loud is cheap. This is a subtraction. What remains when the subtraction is finished is what other men call presence. I call it being unreadable. Stay to the last rule. It is the only one that cannot be faked. And before you continue, leave one word below so I know who is actually listening. Unreadable. We begin with what you must destroy first. Let me explain what people are actually doing when they meet you. They are not judging your worth. They are not measuring your character. They are running a much older and much cruder calculation, one that runs beneath conscious thought and finishes before the handshake does. They are asking, what does this man need from me? That is the whole question. Everything else is decoration. Approval, agreement, attention, comfort, reassurance, the small nod that says you did well. Every man walks into a room carrying a list of things he needs from the people in it. Most men never realize the list is written on their face. And the moment another person reads that list, the hierarchy is set permanently before a word of substance is spoken. Because whoever holds what you need holds you. Nobody explains this part to you. You think respect is earned through competence, through results, through being useful and reliable and good at what you do. Competence matters. It just does not govern this particular thing. I have watched brilliant men be dismissed by fools because the brilliant man needed something and the fool did not. Need is a currency, and your reactions are how you broadcast the balance in your account. Watch what happens when someone insults you in front of others. Your jaw tightens. You laugh a beat too late. You produce a clever line to restore your standing. Every one of those responses says the same sentence. Your opinion of me changes something inside me. You have handed that person a lever. They will use it, not always cruelly, often without even deciding to. People reach for levers the way water finds cracks. Now, put that same insult in front of a man who has removed his need for approval. Nothing happens. No tightening. No clever line. He looks at the man who spoke, waits a beat, and moves on to the next subject. And something strange happens in the room. The insult curdles. It rebounds onto the man who threw it. He looks small and he feels it, and he does not try again. The unreactive man did not defend himself. He never needed defending. That is exactly what the room understood. Now, hear the part that will be uncomfortable. Your reactions are not natural. They feel natural. They were trained into you deliberately by everyone who benefited from being able to steer you. A child who reacts predictably is a child who can be managed. Praise him when he complies. Withdraw warmth when he does not. Do this for 15 years, and you produce an adult who scans every face in a room for signals and adjusts himself before anyone has to ask. That adult calls as being considerate, being a good person. Reading the room. It is a leash. A very comfortable one, worn so long it stopped chafing. The men who rule were not born without this instinct. They were taught to sever it, usually young, usually harshly. In the courts I knew, the sons of ruling families were trained to receive news without expression before they were trained to fight. That was not cruelty for its own sake. A prince whose face reports his thoughts is a prince whose enemies read his strategy across the table. You are not a prince. Your table is smaller. The mechanism is identical. So be clear about what we are doing here. We are not building a costume. We are performing a subtraction, removing the visible needs, removing the automatic responses, removing the constant low hum of please see me as good that most men carry into every interaction of their lives. What remains after that subtraction is what people call aura. It was never added. It was uncovered. And the first thing you must remove is a belief that being understood is a good thing. Lesson 1. The readable man is a governed man. Every man wants to be understood. He calls it connection. He calls it authenticity. He explains his reasoning, shares his frustrations, tells people what he is working toward and why it matters to him. He is drawing a map of himself and handing out copies. I do not say this to make you cold toward the people you love. Intimacy is real and it has its place. But be precise about the exchange. Every fact a man knows about your interior is a place he can press. Your ambitions tell him what to dangle. Your insecurities tell him where to aim. Your loyalties tell him who to threaten. In the courts, we had a term for the man who spoke freely about his own motives. We called him already spent, not because he would be attacked, because he no longer needed to be. He would be steered, and he would believe every step was his own idea. The rulers who survived operated on a rule. So simple it sounds like nothing. Let them guess. They never announced what they wanted. They never explained what pleased them. When they agreed with a proposal, their face looked exactly as it had when they disagreed with the last one. Advisors spent entire nights trying to interpret a single sentence. That interpretation was work. That work was exhaustion. And a court that exhausts itself guessing has no energy left for conspiracy. Test this in your own life. Think of the person you find hardest to influence, not the loudest, the hardest. Now try to describe what they want. Try to name what would wound them. You cannot do it cleanly. That difficulty is not an accident of their personality. It is the entire source of their weight. Being known is pleasant. Being noble is expensive. Start paying attention to how much of yourself you give away in the first 10 minutes of meeting someone. Most men give away nearly everything and call it friendliness. Lesson 2. Your reaction is your price. Everything you own has a price. So does your composure. When a man discovers that a certain word makes you flinch, he has found your price, and it is embarrassingly low. He can move you for free. A comment costs him nothing to make. Your evening costs you everything to lose. This is a trade you have been making without noticing. Someone spends one sentence. You spend 3 hours turning it over. The powerful understand reaction as an expenditure. They ration it. When such a man does react, the room stops because the currency is rare enough to mean something. His anger, on the rare occasion he permits it, restructures relationships for years. Yours have been spent so often that people plan around it the way they plan around bad weather. I knew a magistrate who was famous for one thing. In 11 years of public office, nobody had seen him raise his voice. Petitioners screamed at him. Rivals slandered him in the open square. He would listen, thank them for their time, and continue. Then one afternoon he stood up mid-sentence and said 4 words to a man who had cheated a widow. I will not repeat them. They were not threatening. They were quiet. That man left the city within a month. Nobody made him. He could not bear to be in a place where those 4 words had been spoken to him. 11 years of silence gave those 4 words their weight. That is the arithmetic. Restraint is not the absence of force. Restraint is force being stored. Ask yourself how often you spend yours. Every time you correct someone who does not matter, Every time you defend a position, nobody is truly attacking. Every time you explain yourself to a person who has already decided, you are spending and spending, and then wondering why you have nothing left when it finally counts. Lesson 3. Silence is not emptiness. It is pressure. Most men cannot survive 4 seconds of silence. Watch yourself in the next conversation that stalls. Feel the pull to fill it. That pull is discomfort wearing the costume of politeness. And discomfort tells you which of you is standing in the weaker position. Silence creates a vacuum, and a vacuum pulls. Whoever gives in and speaks has shown you which of them needed the conversation more. In negotiations, this is nearly a law of physics. State your position, then stop. Do not soften it. Do not add a qualifier. Do not laugh to take the edge off. The other man will begin to speak, and men who speak into silence give away more than they intend. They fill the space with concessions, justifications, and information they never planned to share. You are not being rude. You are declining to rescue someone from their own discomfort. The habit runs deeper than negotiation. When someone asks a question designed to provoke you, silence answers it more completely than any sentence. When someone offers a criticism dressed as a joke, a pause, and a level look ends the practice permanently. You never told them to stop. You made stopping the obvious choice. Practice this in low stakes first. A cashier, a colleague, a stranger. Let a question sit for 2 full seconds before answering. See what those 2 seconds do to the other person's posture. The man who can sit inside silence is a man who does not need a conversation to go well. And a man who does not need the conversation to go well cannot be managed through it. Lesson 4. The first man to seek approval sets the hierarchy. The ranking happens fast, and it is almost never decided by the strongest person in the room. It is decided by the first person who reaches for approval. That reach can be almost invisible. A glance to check whether the joke landed. A slight lift at the end of a sentence. Turning a statement into a question. Agreeing too quickly with a man whose opinion you do not respect. Laughing at something that was not funny, because the person who said it seemed to expect it. Each of these is a small transfer of authority, and they compound. The other person did not take anything. You handed it over, freely, in the first minute, and then spent the next 2 years trying to earn back something you gave away for nothing. I watched an ambassador destroy a year of negotiations in the time it takes to cross a room. He entered, and before speaking, he smiled at the prince and waited for a signal that he was welcome. The prince gave nothing, and the ambassador smiled wider. That was the moment the treaty terms shifted, and every man present understood it, and not one word had been exchanged about the treaty. The correction is not arrogance. Arrogance is need in a louder costume. The arrogant man is still asking to be seen, and everyone can hear the asking. The correction is indifference to the outcome of being liked. Enter without scanning faces. Speak without checking whether the room approves. Let your sentences end downward, flat, finished. When something you say lands badly, let it land badly. Do not run after it with an explanation. Most men cannot do this because approval is the only nourishment they have ever known. Take it away and they feel starved. That starvation lasts a few weeks. What grows in its place lasts the rest of your life. Lesson 5. Explanation is a form of obedience. A man arrives late. He is asked why. He produces 4 sentences. Traffic, a call that ran long, a delay at the door. Every sentence is true. Every sentence is a small surrender. Nobody asked him for a report. He was asked a question, and he treated the question as a summons. This is the most common leak in a man's life, and he mistakes it for good manners. He explains his decisions to people who have no authority over them. He justifies his time to people who did not buy it. He answers questions that were never questions. Only tests dress up his curiosity. Each explanation carries a hidden sentence underneath it. I accept that you are entitled to my reasoning. Once you accept that, the entitlement becomes permanent. The other man will ask again. He will ask about larger things. And you will keep answering. Because refusing later feels like an escalation, when refusing at the start would have felt like nothing at all. I watched the captain return from a campaign 3 days after he was expected. The prince asked where he had been. The captain said one word: delayed. Then he stopped talking. The silence in that hall was long enough to be uncomfortable for every man standing in it. The prince waited. The captain did not fill the space. Eventually, the prince moved to the next matter of business, and the campaign was never mentioned again. That captain held a command for another 9 years, not because he was defiant. He answered the question completely and gave nothing beyond it. Learn the difference between an answer and an account. An answer closes a subject. An account opens your life for inspection. When someone asks why you turned down an offer, say that it was not right for you. Stop there. When someone asks why you no longer speak to a particular person, say that it ran its course. Stop there. The pause afterward will feel enormous to you. It will feel like nothing to them. The man who explains himself constantly is not being open. He is asking permission, one sentence at a time. Lesson 6. Anger is a receipt. Men believe anger is a display of strength. Anger is a display of price. When you lose your temper, you have announced to everyone watching exactly what it costs to move you. A comment, a tone, a raised eyebrow at the wrong moment. Whatever triggered, it becomes public information, and that information will be used sometimes by people who never intended cruelty until they saw how cheap the trigger was. Watch a room after a man erupts. Nobody looks frightened. They look interested. They have learned something valuable, and they got it for free. The most feared men I knew were also the calmest, and the two facts were connected. Their anger existed. They were not saints, and several of them did terrible things. But their anger arrived as a decision rather than a reflex, and it arrived so rarely that its arrival restructured everything around it. A man whose anger is common has trained the world to plan around it. He becomes a weather condition. People adjust their schedules, avoid certain topics, and quietly stop bringing him anything difficult. He believes he is respected. He is being managed. Now the harder half. Suppressing anger is not the same as removing it. A clenched jaw and a tight voice broadcast the same information as shouting, only slower. People read the effort. The effort is a confession. What you must build is something else, not restraint, indifference to the provocation itself. That begins with a question you ask yourself in the moment, before your body commits. Does this person's opinion change my position in any real way? Almost always, the answer is no. The insult does not reduce your income. It does not remove your options. It changes nothing except the temperature of your chest. Let it change nothing else. The rare occasions when anger is correct will be obvious. A boundary crossed deliberately. A betrayal with consequences. In those moments, cold is stronger than hot. Say what will happen. Say it once. Do not repeat it. Do not raise your voice, and do not soften it afterward with a joke. Then follow through exactly as stated. Men who follow through do not need to threaten again. Lesson 7. Access is a currency, and you have been giving it away. Everything abundant is cheap. That is a market rule rather than a moral one, and you are standing inside the market whether you accept it or not. Consider how you handle a message. It arrives. You read it within seconds. You answer within a minute, sometimes less, because leaving it unanswered feels rude. You have now taught that person something. Your attention is available on demand at no cost, at any hour. They will not consciously think less of you. The calculation happens beneath thought. The same way you instinctively value a table at a crowded restaurant more than an empty one. Compare that to the man who answers in 6 hours. Nothing about him has changed. His time has become a resource with limited supply, and limited supply produces care. People compose their messages to him more carefully. They ask for less. They think about whether the matter is worth his attention before they send it. Rulers understood this so well that they built architecture around it. Petitions were heard on fixed mornings. Audiences ended when the ruler stood, not when the visitor finished. Access was rationed deliberately, and the rationing did more for their authority than any decree. You are not building a court. You are building a life. The principle transfers without modification. Stop being reachable at every hour. Stop answering the moment your name appears on a screen. Stop accepting every invitation, every request for a favor, every conversation someone wants to have the instant they want to have it. None of this requires rudeness. It requires delay. Be warm when you arrive. Be present when you are present. Then leave before the natural end of the evening, while people still want more of you, rather than stay until the room has fully absorbed you and moved on. The men everyone wants to spend time with are the men nobody gets very much of. Lesson 8. Men do not submit to fear. They submit to uncertainty. This is where most men misunderstand power entirely, and the error costs them decades. They believe the goal is to be feared. So they build a hard exterior, adopt a serious face, and try to project the sense that crossing them would be expensive. Some of them succeed at it, and it does not work the way they expect. Fear is a calculation. A man who fears you will eventually sit down and run the numbers. He will weigh what crossing you costs against what it gains him. One day the numbers will favor him. They always do, given enough time and enough resentment. He decides a price is acceptable, and a structure you spent years building comes down in an afternoon. Every feared man is being quietly priced by the people around him. Uncertainty has no arithmetic. When a man cannot predict your response, he cannot calculate the cost of provoking it. He does not know whether an insult will be ignored or will end his career. He does not know whether a small betrayal will pass unnoticed or bring something down on him that he cannot see coming. A mind with nothing to measure does not calculate. It backs away. This is the mechanism underneath everything in this monologue. Silence, restraint, withheld explanation, ration access. Every rule removes another data point from a model other people are building of you. Strip enough of them away, and the model stops functioning. I knew a man who ran a district for 19 years without ever making a public threat. What he had was a reputation for outcomes nobody could trace back to a decision. A rival would find his contracts drying up. A man who spoke carelessly would discover doors closed that had been open for years. Nothing was ever announced. Nothing was ever denied. Whether he caused any of it, I never learned. It made no difference. Men behaved as though he had, and that behavior was a whole of his power. Understand the distinction precisely. You are not building a reputation for cruelty. Cruelty is readable, and readable men are managed. You are building a reputation for being unmapped. Let people know what you will tolerate. Never let them know what you will do about it. Lesson 9. A boundary does not need a threat behind it. Most men refuse badly, and the sequence is always the same. They say no, then they explain why, then they apologize for the position it puts the other person in. Then, sensing they've given away too much ground, they add an edge to their voice, a hint of consequence, something to restore the weight they lost in the previous 3 sentences. Every part of that sequence is weakness performing strength. The explanation invited negotiation. The apology confirmed they felt guilty. The threat at the end revealed that the first 3 sentences had not worked, and they knew it. A boundary stated correctly needs 1 sentence and no defense. I don't do that. Nothing follows. No reasoning. No softening. No warning about what happens if the request is repeated. The absence of a threat is what makes it heavy. A threat tells the other man there is a scenario in which he might succeed. It implies a contest. A flat refusal implies no contest exists because the matter was settled before he opened his mouth. Rulers understood this in their treaties. The strongest clauses were never the ones listing punishments. They were the ones stating a fact and moving on. A ruler who spent paragraphs describing what he would do if crossed was a ruler whose neighbors quietly concluded he was not certain he could do it. You'll find this difficult, and the difficulty will be physical. Your mouth will want to keep going. The silence after refusal feels like an accusation waiting to be answered. Let it sit there. If the person pushes, repeat the same sentence in the same tone without adding anything, not a variation. The same words. Men rarely push a 3rd time against a wall that does not move, because a wall that does not move gives them nothing to argue with. Then something happens over following months. You will not need to refuse as often. People stop making requests they already know the answer to. The boundary starts doing its work before anyone reaches it. Lesson 10. Every expectation you create becomes a debt. You've been generous. You answered every call. You covered for people. You said yes to things you had no interest in, because saying yes was easier than the conversation that followed no. You believed you were building goodwill. You were building an expectation. Expectations behave like debt, not credit. The moment you fall below the standard you set, the The shortfall registers as betrayal rather than a return to normal. The most generous man in a group is often the least respected. His generosity became the baseline. Nobody thanks a man for meeting the baseline. They only notice when he drops beneath it. Then he declines something. Once, the reaction is disproportionate, almost injured. You've changed. He has not changed. He has stopped subsidizing something people forgot was a subsidy. Machiavelli observed the same pattern in rulers who bought loyalty with gifts. The gifts had to grow every year to produce the same affection, and the year they stopped, the affection turned to resentment faster than any enemy could have arranged. Start low, deliberately. Give less than you are capable of giving in the early stages of any relationship, professional or personal. Not out of coldness, out of arithmetic. A man who begins at 40% has somewhere to go. A man who begins at 100 can only disappoint. Then let increases be occasional and unpredictable. Help that arrives on schedule is a service. Help that arrives without pattern is a gift. And gifts create the thing generosity was supposed to create in the first place. The same applies to praise. A man whose approval is constant has approval worth nothing. Withhold it until it is earned, and when you give it once, plainly, without decoration. That single sentence will be repeated in that person's head for a year. Lesson 11. You cannot fake what you are not willing to lose. Everything to this point was technique. This is a foundation, and without it the rest is theater. You can control your face. You can ration your words. You can delay every message and refuse every explanation and build the entire architecture correctly. And it will hold, right up until you are in a room with something you cannot afford to lose. Then the whole structure leaks. Not through anything you say, through timing, through a half second of hesitation before you answer, through the way you look at the person holding the thing you need. Men need the way animals read fear, through channels neither party can name. The captain who answered with one word could afford to lose his command. That was the source of the word, not his discipline. The man who ran a district for 19 years had built a life that did not collapse if the district was taken from him. The ambassadors who left that study shaken were facing a man who did not require the meeting to go well. This is why the final rule cannot be performed. It is not a behavior. It is a structure you build outside the room long before you ever walk into it, which means the work is not psychological. It is practical. Build income that does not depend on one person's approval. Build a life with more than one door in it. Keep relationships that would survive the loss of your position, and refuse the ones that exist only because of it. Reduce what you owe until no obligation can be used to steer you. Every one of these is unglamorous and slow, and every one of them does more for your presence than a decade of practicing your posture. Men chase aura because it looks like a shortcut. It is the opposite. It is a visible residue of a life arranged so that very little can be taken from you. Once that arrangement is real, you will stop working on your face entirely. There will be nothing left to hide. 3 things will occur to you as this ends, and each of them deserves an answer. The first sounds reasonable. This will make me cold. I will end up alone, respected by strangers and known by nobody. Consider what is actually being removed. Not intimacy. Leakage. Intimacy is chosen, given deliberately, to a small number of people who have earned the ability to see you clearly. What you have been doing is different. You have been broadcasting to everyone in range, indiscriminately, and calling it warmth. The man who is unreadable to 100 people can be entirely open with 3, and his openness lands because it arrives rarely enough to be noticed. The second objection is sharper. This works for men who already have standing. I have none. Silence from a nobody reads as awkwardness, partly true and worth taking seriously. But consider what is actually available to a man with no title, no capital, and no reputation. He cannot buy influence. He cannot inherit deference. Unreadability costs nothing and requires no permission from anyone. It is the one form a weight man can build from a position of complete disadvantage, which explains something about who gets taught it. Sons expected to rule learned it first. Everyone else learned it last, if at all. The third objection is the honest one. This sounds like manipulation. I will be constructing a false version of myself. Look at the mechanism again. You are not adding a signal. You are removing signals you never agreed to send. The flinch, the over-explanation, the laugh arriving late, the instant reply, the approval-seeking glance across a room. None of those were decisions. They were installed early by people who found you easier to handle that way, and you've been running them ever since without ever agreeing to. Removing them is not deception. It is the end of an old one. You came here expecting to be handed a weapon. There is no weapon. There is a subtraction, and the subtraction will take years, and it will cost you habits you currently believe are the best parts of your character. The warmth that was actually fear of disapproval. The honesty that was actually a need to be understood. The generosity that was actually a purchase. None of it survives contact with this doctrine, and none of it deserves to. What replaces it will not feel like power at first. It will feel like absence. Fewer words leaving your mouth. Longer gaps before you answer. Conversations you decline to have, and explanations you decline to give. For a period, you will wonder whether you are becoming smaller. Then something shifts, and it will not announce itself. A man will hesitate before saying something to you that he would have said last year. A request will not be made. A conversation will stop when you enter and start again in a lower register, and nobody will be able to explain what changed, including you. That is the whole of it, not intensity, not cruelty, not the voice you practice in a mirror. A man who has removed his needs from public view, standing in a life arranged so that little can be taken from him, saying considerably less than everyone around him expects. The world does not obey the loudest man in the room. It obeys the one it cannot solve. If this video shifted the way you see power, don't just scroll past it, like this video. Drop a comment telling me which strategy hit you the hardest, and subscribe, because every video on this channel is built to sharpen your mind and separate you from the crowd that stays comfortable. No fluff, no noise, just doctrine. Most people don't lose this game. They just never played it.